Hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Richard and today we're going to be talking about an interesting subject that's been coming up on the news over the last few days, where the UK working population are being called lazy in their approach to productivity and the jobs that they do, etc. And I just thought we'd talk about that. And I'd also like to talk about population growth and a study that I read about 3 weeks ago, which appears to have been removed off the internet, which is interesting because that sort of really puts a different picture on the UK real population numbers. But we'll talk about that later. Come and join me for the next 20 minutes or so, and let's just talk about our lazy UK employees. So, first things first, I don't normally say this, but my numbers in subscriptions have gone up dramatically recently because I've been asking for people to subscribe. The number of subscribers I have is relatively low compared to the number of people watching the videos. I'm asking you, can I please ask you to subscribe and like the video before we get into this detail? Thank you. It really does help the channel. Please do subscribe. So it's very interesting how employers and the government are saying that we're lazy. We're lazy. That's interesting, that. And I'm going to tell you about my story from 2017, where I decided to work to my contract. But yeah, let's start with the big numbers at this moment in time. The GDP, or the gross domestic product, for the UK is currently 0.1%. However, if you take that per capita and based on our exponentially growing population in the UK, that actually runs at minus 0.1%, which means that based on the last months, and of course this was the last quarter of 2024, that means that we're in a bit of a recession. And personally, since 2008 and the crash of 2008, I think that we've been in a bit of a recession anyway. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, so comment below. I'd like to know that. So if we look back at 2008 right through to 2024, I think, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, I think that wage growth, as we've gone through the average over those years, has been very, very low. Whilst inflation, and I appreciate it's been high over the last year or two, but inflation has generally been much higher, or slightly higher, or much higher than wage growth over that period of time since 2008 to 2024, the end of 2024. Do you agree with me on that? I'm not sure. But, you know, which really means if your wages haven't kept up as a percentile of a pay rise every year with inflation, and as everything has got more expensive, etc., including housing, including motor vehicles, yeah, that means that in the net effect is our wages have been reduced. So the buying power before 2028 was much higher than it is now. So our wages have been reduced. But so we're in a state of, and I know the government will want to say this, we're in a state of recession, but we're in a state of stagnation because no one's got the money to be able to go out and buy anything and own something. There's a difference between getting a car on lease or PCP and actually owning the car. When you get it on PCP, you don't actually own the car. You just financing it through until the end, and hopefully you'll pay it off at the end, or maybe you'll trade it in for a newer car. You don't actually own the car, even though on the V5 registration document for the vehicle it does actually say your name on it, but it also states in a statement on there that you might not necessarily be the owner, and that's true in a lot of PCP cases because the owner is the finance company. But yeah, going back to it, so we've had not only have we had higher inflation, but we've got higher interest rates at the moment. I think it's about 4.5%. The Bank of England put it down some 0.25% a few days ago. But, you know, to be fair, they're not particularly high anyway. Don't you remember the times in the 1980s, 90s, when inflation used to be, I don't know, 8%, 12%? The interest rates used to be 8%, 12%, and everybody got used to that, and everybody got paid a good pay rise every year to cater for that level of interest rate. Also, on top of that, over the recent years, maybe 5 years, 10 years, taxes have gone up to an astronomical amount. We're one of the highest taxed countries in the global economy, and I just did a bit of a calculation that I'd like you to think about. Now, I had a look on ChatGPT earlier, and it's actually stating that the average salary in the UK is now £39,000 per year. Do you agree with that? Comment below. £39,000. I believe it's about £29,000. But based on a salary, that we were talking about tax, based on a salary, of let's say £55,000, you would be paying £780 in tax, £260 in national insurance, and of the remaining amount, the £3,550, which is your net take-home pay, you would then pay 20% VAT on everything that you purchased, just about, which would total £700. Your council tax maybe is £180. That's another tax that you have to pay. And that comes up to a total of £1,920, which is thereabouts 42% tax on your gross amount of £4,583. You're paying 42% tax. And that does not include the higher tax that you pay for fuel and for fuel for your car and for your motorbike, etc., etc. That doesn't include that. So that's nearly £2,000 tax of your £4,583 gross pay. Don't you think that's interesting? And that's assuming that you're on £55,000 a year. I thought I'd just put some context in it. Also, looking at the GDP for Germany and France, you would have thought the GDP for Germany would be much higher than 0.1%. It isn't. It's about the same, which surprised me. France is running at more than 2%, which also surprised me as well. So France are doing relatively well across the EU. Anyway, pay rises. So pay rises. We've talked about a few things about pay rises and that. I want to just say before I move into my scenario, public services are a bit gold-plated in the UK, and that's why we do have high taxes. But the things that we see in front of our eyes as the normal workers of the UK, we see potholes in the roads, we see kids going wild, we see violence in the major cities, and we don't see a lot of good stuff. Let's understand it, the UK is a beautiful place to live and it's very, very safe, and we don't have earthquakes or tornadoes and things like that. So we're in a safe part of the world where we don't struggle with anything too much. I know we have bad weather, but it's not dramatically bad weather. But we do expect gold-plated services from our councils and things like that. And that's why we pay high taxes. What do you think to that? What do you think to that statement? When it comes to, a lot of other countries, when you empty your bins, you at home, and I've lived in a couple of countries, you take your bin, your rubbish, your rubbish bag out of your kitchen, down to a centralised place. We don't have a bin that is specific to a household. So you might have to take your bag to the end of the road and put it in one of the large containers, where an automated truck or a semi-automated truck then comes and picks it up through the night and empties it, rather than what we call dustbin men or refuse collectors, and they're running around. You don't have that in many other countries. We really do have a gold-plated service when it comes to certain things, yeah, and that's why we pay higher taxes. One of my thoughts about the UK is that we act as a country. We act like we own a Ferrari when we can only afford a Toyota Aygo in the economies of the world. And I think a lot of other countries do as well. We're not alone like that. It's almost like seeing the guy or gal that drives down with the lime green Lamborghini down the road. They haven't paid it off. That it's been rented for 2 days at the weekend, and they're just having it for rent for £4,000. Where they got the £4,000 for to go and rent it, that's a different problem. But that is what it is. Let me tell you about my story. Prior to 2017, I've worked in the IT industry, generally speaking, and I get salaried. So that means I don't get any overtime or anything like that. I'm expected to do the hours that's needed to deliver the products. And subsequently, from the age of, let's say, mid-20s through to 2017, that's exactly what I was doing. I was spending lots and lots of hours working and getting a salaried pay. And in effect, I was working twice as many hours, therefore my hourly pay, based on 37 hours a week, was actually half of what it really was, because I was working twice as many hours. And I know lots and lots of other people, like yourself, work extra hours and things like that. There was no overtime because of my position in the various businesses that I've worked for through my career. And in 2017, as I prepared to move to Qatar, I lived in Qatar for a couple of years, I negotiated my salary and everything was fine. A week and a half prior to me moving over to Qatar, the agency that was managing my new work over in Qatar decided to reduce my pay by some 10 or 12%. And I said to them, I'll tell you what, I'm happy for you to reduce my salary, my pay, my monthly pay by 10 or 12%, of which I was not particularly happy about. But as a counter offer, I said, based on that reduction, you will see me start at the agreed time and I will end at the agreed time, and you will get no more hours out of me, so that there's no flexibility. If something goes wrong at 7 p.m. at night, I'm not going to be contactable. Are you absolutely sure that that's what you want? And they said yes. But of course, they were not saying yes on behalf of the customer. They were saying yes as behalf of a recruitment agency. So that's what I did, and that's why my contract lasted 2 years. And then they would say at the end of it, well, it's because you were inflexible, of which I retorted and said, well, that's because you reduced my pay by 12%. In the last week prior to me coming over to Qatar and working. Bearing in mind I'd already resigned from my previous job, I'd already packed everything up and put things in storage, or however you want to call it. And that's when I started working 8 hours a day. Now this may be why some people are being seen as lazy, because they're working in effect to rule. Yes, so when I went over to Qatar, I had a great time, 2 years. If you got the opportunity to work in Qatar, go for it. But I virtually worked to rule, which is not my normal method of working. I'm usually very, very flexible to make sure the product gets delivered on time, etc., etc., and to the right quality, etc. And so I was in effect working to rule. Could it be a case that the people in the UK are so tired of not having decent pay rises over the last 17 years since 2008 that everybody's working to rule, or many people are working to rule? And as such, the government and employers are seeing the working population in general as lazy, when they're actually working to rule. What's your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts? Gone are the days, and since 2017 for me, gone are the days where I work 16 hours a day and maybe a day over the weekend. That's all gone now. That said, I'm flexible. Only last week was I working until 9 o'clock at night with my counterpart over in America. Yeah, I'm based in the UK, and my counterpart is in America, and we were working together to get something done. Yeah, but that additional time will come back to me at some point in the very near future. Yeah, it's almost like working flexi time. What's your thoughts on that? Is it more a case where the UK population are tired of putting in the extra hours and not getting the benefits associated to that, and they're just working to rule? They do their 8 hours a day and then go home and spend quality time with their family, of which I, in the past, missed out on. I was working until 11 o'clock prior to 2017, working till 11 o'clock at night and missing times with my 2 sons, which I can't get back. I can't get that time back. That's gone. Yeah, you can't go back. That time's gone. So not only did I not get paid, but I missed the opportunity to see my 2 boys grow. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that. I don't. There we go. What do you think to that? I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Now I want to talk about the second bit, the population growth. A couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I saw a report. I was looking at a report and I thought, that is really interesting. And it was a report from a food agency of the government, and it's been removed, or I'm struggling to find it. And it was saying that based on the amount of food being purchased from all the shops and all the cafes and all the restaurants in the UK, that they were calculating that the actual population size for the UK should be, based on the volume of food being purchased, should be about, the population should be about 80 million. And this takes into account the level of waste that we perform with our food, because we do waste food sometimes. Yes, we do that. And taking into account waste and overbuying and all that good stuff, they calculated that based on the volume of food from all the supermarkets, all the shops, all the corner shops, the cafes, the restaurants, everywhere that you purchase food, based on the volume being sold, the actual number of the population of the UK is somewhere around 80 million people. I realised a couple of weeks ago, and this is why I looked at this report, a couple of weeks ago that they were saying in some number of years, and I can't remember how many years it is, that the population of the UK would be in the region of 72 million people, based on immigration and all that. Be it legal or illegal, it doesn't matter. But based on immigration, it would be around 72 million. But that conflicted with this report from the food agency, be that governmental or not, which I can't find now, which is bizarre, that the population of the UK, based on the volume of food purchased from all sources across the UK, meant that the UK must be somewhere around a population of 80 million people. Does that sound right to you? What's your thoughts on that? Does it sound ridiculous? I just can't find the report. If I found the report, I'd be showing it right now. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. And I've always said that the UK population was higher than the government had quoted. Not for any particular political reason, I wasn't saying that. I'm saying that the population is higher. Yeah, based on some of the activities I've done in the work. I've done some work with the Department of Work and Pensions in the past, and I was going through some numbers, and I said, hang on, this doesn't look accurate. And it was accurate, but it wasn't accurate with the numbers being issued out at the time. So, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. I hope this has been thought-provoking. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Put the thoughts below. And we'll take it from there. Thanks ever so much. Ride safely, be kind, and eat healthily. See you soon. See you in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.